If someone asked me when was the first moment I realized everything had changed, I wouldn't mention the voice recording. Not the ornate invitation. Not the averted eyes of the man who once swore he'd always be honest with me. I would talk about that morning, when I woke up, made a cup of coffee like I did every day, and suddenly realized I had brewed the kind of coffee he liked. Not mine. And I had been doing that for the past 3 years. No one made me. No one forced me. But little by little, I had abandoned myself, as gently as a silent nod. The greatest betrayal, in truth, isn't infidelity. It's when you lose the voice inside you, and no one notices. People always think betrayal happens to the careless, to broken marriages. But no, it can happen when you're trying the hardest, loving the deepest, trusting the most. And because of that, it hurts. I'm not writing this story to talk about pain. Pain, everyone has known it. Each person carries a wound no one else can see. I only want to tell the journey, how I came back to myself. Not with anger, not with revenge, but with a quiet no one could extinguish. Maybe you've stood at that crossroad, where one path is regret, one is fear, and the other you have no idea where it leads. Only that it's empty, except for you. I chose that path, and this is my story. I left Nathan on a rainless Tuesday morning. There was no shouting, no collision, just 2 suitcases, a brown leather bag, and a cat named Thistle hiding in a box. I didn't cry, I didn't tremble, I just felt light. Strangely light. For the next 3 months, I lived in a small house at the end of Seabreeze Lane, a place no one noticed unless they meant to find it. 1 floor, ivory wooden roof, a porch swing that creaked every afternoon. People called it the house of those once left behind. I didn't correct them. Sometimes, definitions don't have to be accurate, just real enough. I used to be the wife of a successful man, with the appearance of a gentleman and a gaze that knew how to make people feel small. Nathan didn't hit me. He didn't cheat on me right away. But it took me 3 years to realize that some wounds make no sound. Some betrayals come wrapped in compliments, in forgetfulness, and in nights he came home after 10 p.m. with strange perfume lingering on his collar. I am Claire Bennett, 33 years old, once a user experience designer for apps that helped others live easier, only to realize I didn't know how to do that for myself. The day I left, the sink held 3 glasses, 2 clean, 1 dirty. The dirty one was mine. The others belonged to Nathan and Brielle, the woman he said was a yoga coach helping him find balance. Ironic. Really, I lost mine because of her. I didn't snoop. I didn't go through his phone or check his emails. The truth came to me more quietly than that. I didn't discover it through suspicion. I wasn't the kind of woman who checked browser histories or interrogated him when he got home late. No, I trusted Nathan more than anything. And maybe that's exactly why I no longer knew where to begin doubting. That morning, I woke up earlier than usual. The soft gray light spilled in through cream-colored silk curtains, and the house was drenched in the scent of coffee from the automatic machine. 2 phones lay side by side on the counter. Identical, same model, same smoky gray case. I picked up the wrong one. That's all. No motive, no reason, just a habit, a tiny movement that happened to open a door I could never close again. The screen lit up for just 3 seconds. The sender's name appeared with a tiny leaf emoji. Brie Herb. And the message. What do you think if the baby has your eye color? I stood still. The entire kitchen froze. I didn't scream. I didn't shake. Just something quietly cracked inside me. Like when you gently knock a white porcelain cup against the sink. You don't see the crack right away. But you feel it. A sound so faint you're not sure it was real, until one day. The cup shatters in your hand as you pour hot water into it. I put the phone down like it could burn my skin. The feeling wasn't anger. It was emptiness. A vacuum sweeping through my body, taking away every excuse I had ever told myself. He's just busy. We're going through a tough phase. No one's perfect. I had kept my eyes shut for too long. And now, opening them, the light was too bright, too real. I sat down at the table. My hands trembled. But I didn't cry. The tears didn't come right away. What came first was disorientation. I felt like I was standing in my own room, but couldn't find the door. Didn't know who had locked it. Didn't know how long I had been inside. And the pain began to bleed slowly. It didn't stab, it seeped, soaking into every finger, every thought. The baby. She was pregnant. And he called the baby, the one with your eye color. How long had I lived with someone I no longer recognized? Then I left the house. No keys, no phone, just me and my bare feet. The morning sky still lingered in mist, and the waves lapped gently like even the ocean wasn't ready to wake up. I walked along the beach, where the cold white sand wrapped around my toes, reminding me in a soft but certain way that I still existed. That I was still here, physically whole, even if my soul was shattered. The sea breeze rushed through my hair, slipped through my thin sweater, like caressing a woman who had just survived a storm no one knew about. No one saw, no one witnessed the moment her world cracked open. I walked on, not knowing how far or what time it was. The sun gradually rose, its light piercing through thick clouds, stretching across the water like a ribbon of liquid gold. I didn't cry. Sometimes pain doesn't erupt as tears, it lies dormant, flowing inward, silent and enduring, like a cut in a place you can't bandage. I asked myself, why did you do this? Why did you write another story while I was still trusting the old draft? When the sun was fully up and strangers began walking their dogs, I returned home. My steps grew heavier. My mind was blank, like a sandy shore after the tide recedes, leaving hollows and broken shells behind. That night, I stood at the kitchen counter watching him. Nathan, wrapped in his gray hoodie, sat on the sofa as usual, his eyes fixed on the TV, his hand scrolling on his phone, occasionally smiling at something I couldn't see. He seemed unaware of the darkness I had slipped into in this house. I stepped closer and stood tall. Today the sea was beautiful. I began, trying to start a normal conversation. But my voice cracked. He looked up, slowly, his gaze resting on my face, as if probing my mood. I asked, for the first and last time, do you have something you want to say to me, Nathan? He paused for a second, unhurried, without blinking. That 1 second was long enough for me to glimpse a theater behind his eyes, where lies were rehearsing their lines. Finally, he replied, I'm tired. Can we talk tomorrow? No sign of embarrassment. No touch, no hint of regret, just a brief sentence, polite, yet cold enough to close every door. I nodded, said nothing more. We didn't have to. I understood. When a man no longer dares to look you in the eyes and speak the truth, everything is over, whether you name it or not. The next morning, I left. No commotion, no tears, no slammed doors, just me, and a small suitcase. I didn't tell my mother, who would react as if the entire universe had collapsed at the thought that her daughter was no longer the ideal wife on a wedding photo. I didn't tell Maddie, my closest colleague in San Francisco, who used to gush, your husband looks like he stepped right out of an Armani ad. You're so lucky. I once thought that too. But it turned out that perfume never truly clung to me. It just brushed past, like a promise that never belonged to me. I arrived in Seabreeze on a windy day with salty air weaving through the corridor of the small building where I rented a second-floor apartment. Not spacious, not fancy, but private enough, quiet enough, and enough for me to start again. I did everything myself. Removed old curtains, replanted tomato pots on the balcony, bought a hammer and hung paintings. I learned to face silence without fear. No TV on all day to mask an empty heart. No forced small talk to fill gaps. Each morning, I woke early, brewed coffee with an old machine I bought at a thrift market. I played an instrumental jazz playlist, slow tunes by Bill Evans or Chet Baker, and opened the curtains to let in the morning light. The sunlight touched my skin like a gentle whisper. You survived. In the afternoons, I swept the yard, removed cobwebs in the bathroom, and learned to cook for one and still find dinner worth looking forward to. No one told me to diet. No one criticized my cooking. No one asked, how many eggs are you eating? No one entered my home without knocking. No one promised to wash dishes and left them for 3 days. No one told me to be less sensitive. 3 months. I began to breathe again, not the rapid breaths of survival, but deep, full breaths, as if my lungs were experiencing air without cigarette smoke, without the stench of lies. For the first time, I had neither forgiven nor forgotten. But I was learning to belong to myself again. 3 months later, I thought I had moved on. I moved to a small seaside town, learning to live slowly, living alone. Every morning I brewed coffee, watered my roses, and wrote in a journal as a form of healing. I told myself, I'm strong enough now. And then that envelope appeared. On a sunny Thursday afternoon, I was watering plants when the mailman stopped at the gate. He handed me a cream-colored envelope on a wooden shelf beside the door. I wasn't expecting anything. In Seabreeze, people rarely used letters. Everything was email, messenger, bank notifications via apps. That envelope lay there, sturdy, elegant, as if it belonged to a world entirely different from the one I was living in. I wiped my hands on my shirt, approached, and picked it up. My name was handwritten in a rounded, ornate script, with a small smiley at the end of my name, the kind women often use to soften something hard to swallow. Inside was an invitation card, baby shower, M. I froze. My heart constricted, not violently, but shrinking millimeter by millimeter, as though my body tried to close in on itself to avoid more pain. I tore the edge of the envelope. Inside was an elegant invitation card with golden trim, decorated with dried lavender affixed to the corner. Very neat, very stylish, very Brielle. The only reason I didn't immediately toss it into the trash was the tiny handwritten note inside the envelope. Claire, I trust you wouldn't want to be absent. Not spiteful, not flattering, just cold and direct, as brutal as a punch to the stomach. And what hurt the most was that I didn't know why I still kept it. Maybe because I haven't forgiven. Maybe because I still don't fully know what happened. Or, maybe I'm waiting for something that would allow me to end everything with the truth. Not just a conclusion. I smiled, laughing at something so absurd, so raw, so cruelly disguised with gentle words. Brielle, the woman who messaged my husband at 1 a.m. that night, I miss your scent. Brielle, the woman who used to call me Sister Claire when she interned at the architecture firm where I managed. Now she invites me to celebrate their baby shower, as if we were old friends who had overcome the past and were now walking together into maturity. Civilization, nobility. I placed the invitation card on the wooden table, stared at it like it was some foreign object, an object that knew exactly how to tear a tiny hole through the wall I'd spent 3 months building, brick by brick, with loneliness, bitter coffee, and a wordless jazz playlist. I walked into the room and poured a glass of water. My hands were shaking. I used to think I was fine. I used to believe 3 months in Seabreeze had been enough to stitch me whole. But the truth is, no one is ever truly prepared to watch their betrayer invite them to witness the happy ending they wrote for themselves. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay on my side, eyes fixed on the ceiling. My mind like a summer storm, not loud, but flickering restlessly with thunder. I remembered Nathan's eyes the last time we spoke. No remorse, no confusion, just tiredness, as if I was the one weighing down his life. I remembered how he once said, "You know, I don't need much from you. Just don't be so complicated." I didn't understand then. Now I do. Complicated meant feeling things, having expectations, holding memories, having standards. Brielle was the opposite. Always calm, knew when to smile, when to stay silent, knew how to turn every lie into something palatable. And most importantly, she knew how to never make a man feel guilty. I didn't respond to the invitation. Didn't call. But I thought about it all week. I walked to the beach every afternoon, not to escape this time, but to reflect. The sea breeze no longer had the sting it once did. It simply slipped through my shirt gently, reminding me I was still alive. Still standing after a collapse no one had ever taught me how to survive. I began to write, short fragments, bits retelling my own marriage, the sweet chapters, the shattered pieces, writing, like pulling out splinters from my chest, one by one. Some nights I sat at my desk till 2 a.m., typing and deleting the same line. I used to think I was the exception. Turns out, I was just the stepping stone. Life kept moving slowly, and I almost forgot about that thoughtless invitation. Until one Saturday afternoon, I went to the little wooden cafe under the pines near the cliff's edge. and saw a man sitting at the familiar corner table by the window. Messy hair, a Leica camera on the table, fingers wrapped gently around an espresso. Evan Rhodes, Brielle's ex, at least, before she met my husband. He recognized me almost at the same time. We nodded. That silent greeting of two people who once knew each other in a different world, now drifting on separate currents. I was about to wave and move on, but he motioned me over, and I sat down, as if pulled by something I hadn't yet named. "Didn't expect to see you here," he said, his voice lower, a bit rougher than it had been almost 2 years ago, back when Brielle had just moved out of their shared apartment. "I live nearby now," I replied. "Left the city a while ago." Evan nodded, then went quiet. He looked at me more closely. "You okay?" I smiled faintly, the kind of smile that doesn't plan to answer. "I'm learning how to be." After a while, he pointed at the envelope I had placed on the table. "Invitation?" I nodded, not hiding it from them. "Sent it all the way here." Evan was silent for a few seconds, then exhaled. "I got one too." I blinked. "You were invited?" "Brielle sent it." I'm not sure if it was mockery or sincerity. She once said, "We can still be friends." But I never bought that. I looked at the coffee I'd just ordered. The ocean breeze nudged softly against the window pane. There was something in his eyes that made me uneasy. "Is there something you want to say?" I asked, straight to the point. Evan hesitated. Then he reached into his bag and pulled out a folded sheet of paper, a printout of a message. "She texted me once, about a month after leaving me and starting things with Nathan. She said, 'The baby might be mine.'" I went cold. "What?" She wasn't sure, or pretended not to be. But when I asked again, she didn't reply, then blocked me. I couldn't say anything for a few seconds. My eyes locked onto the paper. Each line of Brielle's message like frost. "I think it might be yours. But don't say anything. Things have gone too far now." I sat there frozen, like someone listening to a horror story, not because it was grotesque, but because it could be true. I remembered Brielle's eyes in that social media photo, wearing a white dress, cradling her belly, smiling proudly as if daring the world to believe in a purity she never possessed. I remembered Nathan whispering, "That's my child. We should accept that." I shivered. Evan handed me my coffee. I wasn't sure I wanted to know the truth back then. But after seeing the invitation, I thought maybe it's time to end things, with honesty. He looked me straight in the eyes. "If you had the chance, would you want to end all of this, with the truth?" I clenched the envelope. I thought about my mother, who still calls every night, urging me to pray, to forgive. I thought about Maddie, who always said I should let it go, for the sake of peace. And I thought about myself, the woman who once broke down in tears when she saw the first 2 a.m. message from Brielle pop up on her husband's phone. I used to believe forgiveness was the only way to let go. But now I know. Some things can't be released until they're named. I looked at Evan. "I'm not doing this for revenge." He nodded. "I know." I spoke slowly, each word brushing against a hidden reef inside me. "Not for revenge, but so that everyone has to live in truth." That night, back in my apartment, I opened my laptop and created a new folder, The Truth. I saved Evan's message, archived the old ultrasound photo Brielle had posted, then downloaded a confidential paternity test request form. I didn't know what would come next. Maybe I'd be hated, accused of being bitter, of not letting go. But at the very least, if I had to face the mirror every morning, I wanted to see a woman who had the courage to live honestly. I spent nearly 10 minutes standing in front of the mirror, wondering whether this simple navy dress was quiet enough. I didn't want a dress that made anyone turn their head. I didn't plan to enter like some villain, sexy, dramatic, a storm in heels. I just wanted to see myself, without flinching. For too long, I let others rewrite who I was. The pitiful wife, replaced because she was no longer fit. The woman is too sensitive, too demanding, not pleasant enough to hold on to happiness. I once believed all that. I used to think maybe I had really become complicated, like Nathan once blurted out. But as I stood in front of the mirror today, hands trembling as I buttoned the collar of my dress, I knew. No, I didn't come to reclaim anything that was lost. I didn't come for revenge. And I didn't need anyone to look at me with pity or admiration. I came to remind myself. I was once part of that story. And I deserve to be acknowledged, not as a forgotten detail in their new wedding photo. I'm no longer the one standing on the sidelines, watching my life being rewritten by others in pastel colors and sweet lies. I came to reclaim just one thing: the truth. The dress wasn't anything remarkable. Its fit was just snug enough that I wouldn't feel out of place among a crowd of well-dressed people. A small V neckline, mid-length sleeves, tailored just enough not to seem like it was trying too hard. I tied my hair back neatly, not to look younger, but to keep my face clear for when I needed to look someone in the eye. I wore a deep red lipstick, not to seduce, but to remind myself, I'm no longer fragile. I have the right to show up as a woman who has gone through heartbreak and still chooses to stand tall. Everything was intentional, not to prove I was better, but to remind myself that I was no longer a passive character in the story they wrote. I wasn't sure what would happen there. I didn't know how Nathan would look at me, how Brielle would react, or what kind of gazes would follow me, skeptical, pitying, or simply avoiding. But I knew if I showed up, calmly, quietly, I would no longer be someone they could easily brush aside. And for me, that was enough. Evan showed up at my apartment door at 2 p.m. No flowers, no small talk. He just looked at me, gave a slight nod, and said, "Ready?" I nodded. We got into the car like two people carrying the truth, not as a weapon, but as the final report after a long audit. The villa in the southern part of the city didn't just exude wealth, it flaunted it deliberately. A wide garden lit with warm yellow string lights along the walkway like an outdoor runway. Ancient olive trees adorned with silk ribbons and pastel paper flowers, each trunk marked with a nameplate, as if every detail had been meticulously planned for weeks. I caught sight of a team of neatly dressed staff pushing drink carts. A DJ adjusting sound levels at the back of the stage. A string quartet tuning their instruments, clearly not hired just to play music, but to evoke something elite, refined, and completely removed from a world where inconvenient secrets come to light. Laughter and chatter echoed from inside, the sound of people who believed today was a celebration. The sound of those who had never had to question trust. The sound of the lucky, or the blind, who didn't realize pain can seep even into brightly lit rooms filled with fresh flowers. As we stepped into the main hall, the atmosphere became strangely heavy. The scent of vanilla from the towering cake, mixed with lavender candles and fresh flower arrangements, made everything sickeningly sweet, like a well-packaged lie. Enticing, but nauseating once you knew the truth behind it. Amid silver balloons and ivory linen tablecloths hand-stitched with delicate lace was a large sign hanging under the soft golden lights. "Welcome Baby M." The M, capitalized, encrusted with glittering stones, as if the child was some miracle waiting to be born. And everyone here somehow believed that. Not a single soul seemed to question otherwise. Or if they did, they chose silence. Nathan stood in the crowd. He wore a crisp white linen shirt, pale blue trousers, and polished brown loafers. His hand rested on Brielle's belly, just like a proud, slightly smug father-to-be. He beamed at a guest who had just walked up, unaware my eyes were locked on his every movement. And her, Brielle, she was the center of this sparkling universe. Her belly was full and round under a pearl-pink silk dress, tailored perfectly to accentuate the form of a woman in her 8th month. She held her belly gently, like she herself embodied softness and sacredness. Her blonde hair loosely styled, a few intentional curls draping over her shoulders. Her cheeks were flushed, flawless, like she'd just stepped off the cover of a motherhood magazine. She smiled at every guest, teary-eyed, lips pursed just right in that happy mommy look. No sign of calculation, no trace of the late-night rendezvous I'd heard clearly in the recording tucked in my handbag. The broken whispers, uttered in the dark, from the same mouth that once smiled at me over dinner, were now echoing coldly in my head. Words spoken in the same breath as the man who once told me he'd never hurt me. Everything was unfolding like a film already in post-production. And they, Nathan and Brielle, were the stars. Bathed in perfect lighting, playing roles I once lived through until I bled. And I, was now the outsider, clutching the invitation like a living scar. Evan and I didn't do anything dramatic. No shouting, no hair pulling. We didn't storm in like party crashers, but like people who had nothing left to fear. We walked straight to the buffet table, where pastel cupcakes were arranged in towers, next to trays of fruit carved into baby elephants holding balloons. At the center was a glass table with lace cloth, each place marked with hand-written thank you cards in gold ink. Evan placed a thick white envelope on the table. He didn't need to say a word. A few glances turned toward us, puzzled, curious. Then someone whispered to someone else. And then, Nathan saw me. We locked eyes for exactly 2 seconds, but in those 2 seconds, I saw every emotion flash across his face like a film in fast forward. Surprise, suspicion, then panic. His hand pulled away from Brielle's belly like he had touched something burning. Brielle turned, still smiling halfway. A smile that hadn't fully died yet. Evan took a step back and pulled an old phone from his coat pocket. A small, clunky phone. No internet. No distractions. But inside it held something heavier than any viral post. He pressed play on a video. It took only seconds. The sound echoed clearly through the space that had gone momentarily still. The baby has your chin. Evan. Nathan doesn't notice anything. Brielle's voice, unmistakable. That same voice that once laughed with me over cozy dinners. Now it sliced through the room like ice, a clean, sharp wound. Nathan froze. He looked at me, then at Evan, then turned to Brielle. What is this? His voice was hoarse, like something was lodged in his throat. Brielle stepped back, her eyes wide, lips pressed so tightly they turned pale. It was a joke, she stammered. I just was afraid of losing you. So I said that so Evan would stop coming after me. Evan's voice was calm, but his words cut cold like a blade. It wasn't fear, it was manipulation. I reached into my purse and pulled out a second envelope, not another invitation, but the printed results of a DNA test. I quietly put it on the table and gently slid it toward Nathan. He didn't touch it immediately. His hand shook. He looked at me as if hoping I'd say, "It's just a misunderstanding." But I remained silent. Evan spoke up. 3 weeks ago, I took a hair sample from Brielle's comb. And I had my own DNA sample from my annual checkup. I used a private lab, discreet, expensive. The results confirm I am 99.97% likely the biological father of the baby. The atmosphere shattered. No one spoke for several minutes, just whispers like wind through a thorny field. Nathan took a half step back, bracing himself with his hand against the table. His face turned pale. Sweat soaked his collar. He looked at Brielle. You lied to me? No, I wasn't sure. She rushed, voice trembling. Evan was my ex-boyfriend. I only slept with him once, before we became serious. Which was a week before the wedding. Nathan whispered, piecing together shards of broken memory. Brielle cried, not tears of remorse, but panic from someone about to lose everything. I love you, Nathan. I never thought the baby was his. I was afraid if he found out. Afraid of what? I said coldly. That he'd have a right to be the father? Or afraid of losing the health insurance card in your name, Nathan Cross, marketing director and sponsor of your dream of becoming a mother? Brielle looked at me as though seeing me, truly seeing me, for the first time, not the shadow of a betrayed wife. Nathan froze. His eyes, once melting with love when he proposed, now held a look I never expected. Shame. Claire, I didn't know. I swear, I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I just said, whether you knew or not, you chose to believe something too perfect to be true. And now, the truth has shown up at your door. Evan looked at me. Shall we go? I nodded. Before turning away, I glanced at the cake shaped like a baby elephant holding a balloon, a symbol of innocence, joy, illusion. The baby might not be to blame, but the deceit woven around it had grown like a cradle lined with silk and thorns. After the audio stopped, the fragile sounds continued to echo in the room, the clinking of glasses, hesitant footsteps, a whispered, "What's happening?" and caught breaths behind lashes. I said nothing more. There was no need. Everything was left there, on paper, in DNA numbers, in that undeniable recording. Yet Nathan followed me. The party room felt suffocating behind us as he pushed the wooden door open and ran a few steps to catch me in the marble-floored hallway. "Claire, please." His voice was hoarse, no longer confident, no longer commanding the room. "Is there any way I can fix this?" I stopped. Not because I wanted to hear more, but because I needed to see clearly whether this man truly understood what he had lost. "What do you want to fix, Nathan?" I turned to him, the overhead light glinting on my hair like metal. "Fix the years I have forgotten? Or fix the trust you handed to someone else as though it meant nothing?" He was silent. I saw in his eyes something like remorse, but not enough to touch my heart. "Claire." He reached out and touched my hand lightly. I thought, maybe it was exhaustion. Work. Distance. Because. I withdrew my hand, gently but decisively. "You always have a reason. Always find someone or something to blame. Don't you?" I said, not accusing, but like someone observing her own life from a distance. "But it was never truly you." The corridor breeze drifted in. The vanilla scent from the party lingered on my sleeve, but now too sweet. Suffocating. And I'm no longer the woman to be chosen. "Nathan." I spoke, each word firm like a newly realigned spine. "I don't need anyone to save me. I need to live in truth." I walked away. My shoes made no echo, but each step bore the weight of a chapter's end at the end of the hall. Pale late afternoon light fell. Evan had left earlier. I knew he would not stay for any triumph, for this was not about winning. This was a genuine ending. I got into the car without crying that evening. I returned to my small Fairhaven apartment, a place I had rented alone. On the table, a vase of lavender had been placed. I didn't need to read the card to know it was from Julian Hart. We were college first loves, awkward but intense years. We parted when both believed our careers meant everything. Julian dreamed of opening a seaside bookstore. I wanted to work in the city. Life passed, so fast no one stopped to ask, "Are we happy?" 3 months ago, I bumped into him at that bookstore, a small gray-walled shop with a handwritten sign. Julian now owns it, lives in Fairhaven, enjoys black coffee, reads at 10 p.m., and remembers the names of writers I once loved. We didn't rush. No kisses in the cafe. No love letters every morning. He asked real questions, not, "Are you okay?" but, "When was the last time you felt respected?" I don't know exactly when I fell in love again. I just know that whenever I'm with him, I don't feel like someone walking out of rubble. I feel like Claire, simply Claire. No act needed that night. I called Julian. I didn't go into detail. I said, "It's over." He paused, then asked, "Are you hungry?" And as if the whole world shrank to that one question the next morning, I folded the navy dress and placed it in a paper bag, not to wear again. But as a witness to the day I crossed an old threshold without bowing, I left the DNA results in a drawer, next to a slim volume of poetry. I don't intend to use it in any lawsuit. I don't need anyone to pay. Sometimes justice doesn't mean punishment. It's the right to move forward without carrying someone else's lies. That afternoon, I sat on the back steps of the bookstore. Julian brought out 2 cups of ginger honey tea. We didn't speak much. We simply watched the clouds drift by. He asked, "Do you regret anything?" I shook my head. Not really. If I hadn't been forgotten, I wouldn't have learned how to remember myself. Julian didn't hug me. He just took my hand. The hand that was once let go for no reason, now held. Light as a promise that no longer needs words. I hold no hatred. I just know I walked out of that shattered party room with a fragile smile, not for victory, not for revenge. It was simply an ending. A period that had long been waiting to be placed. 8 months after the truth came to light. Time passed like a still lake after a storm. No one stirred things up anymore. No one called out names. Everything quieted, not because it was forgotten, but because each person was learning how to live on without touching old wounds. One morning, while rearranging bookshelves at the shop with Julian, I received a message from Evan. Brielle gave birth. The baby's name is Miles. Just one sentence. No exclamation mark. No glittery words like sacred or miracle. I looked at that line, and no great emotion rose in me. But something very light had just been set down, like when you finally remove a piece of jewelry you've worn too long, only to realize your neck feels so much lighter. I asked, "Did you get back together with her?" Evan replied after a few minutes. No, I just moved to Oregon. Near where she lives. The child deserves to know where he comes from. But he doesn't need to grow up in a lie. That answer made me sit still for a moment. Not because I was emotional, but because it was clear Evan wasn't a man trying to rekindle the past. He was a father trying to do what's right. And that was enough. And Nathan? I heard he withdrew from all social circles. Left every familiar gathering. Moved away from San Francisco to Vermont, a small town where no one knew his name. Where no one asked, "Are you okay?" when they really meant, "How much did you lose?" One day, I received a postcard. No return address. Just one line. "Thank you for letting me hit rock bottom. Otherwise, I'd still be living in a lie." I didn't cry. Honestly, I didn't. I just smiled. Softly. Not because of anyone, not because of regret. Not for justice. Simply because I'm okay, and I've made it through these days. I live with Julian in a small wooden house in Fairhaven, a home with windows facing the forest, where morning light is never blocked. Some days, I wake up early just to listen to the birds. And on other mornings, I sleep in, because I no longer need to prove anything. We have a little girl, Ellie, Julian's daughter from a previous marriage. Ellie is 8, loves pink markers, hates math, and often asks the kind of unexpected questions that leave me torn between laughing or answering seriously. One afternoon, while I was trying to pour pancake batter into the pan, Ellie rested her chin on her hands and asked, "Do you know how to make crepes?" I looked up, saw her furrowed brow, and laughed. "No, but can you teach me?" Ellie nodded, her eyes bright like she'd just been entrusted with something incredibly important. And just like that, I felt full, not with memories, but with the new things being created every day. Not living to repair the past, but to build something that never existed before. Julian and I plan to marry next spring. Nothing elaborate. No fluffy wedding dress or distant guests, just a small gathering in the garden behind our home. Warm yellow string lights hanging across the cherry branches. Burlap-covered tables, jars of wildflowers, and soft afternoon jazz. We don't need a wedding to prove anything. But we both want a day where Ellie will wear a little cream-colored dress and dance among the cupcakes. Someone once asked me, "Claire, do you feel like you've gotten your revenge?" I simply smiled. Neither confirming nor denying. I don't need anyone to suffer for me to heal. I don't need to see the past punished to believe I was right. I just needed them to stop. Stop hurting me. Stop twisting me into who they wanted me to be. Stop, so I could move forward without looking back. And that was enough. I don't need applause. I don't need anyone to call me strong. I'm just a woman who was once forgotten, once betrayed. But now, each morning, I can wake up, look at the person beside me, and say to myself, I don't live to be loved by anyone. I live so that I can truly be myself.